I should have known something was wrong when Marcus started putting his phone face down during dinner. Such a small thing, really, but it was like watching the first domino fall in what would become the complete destruction of everything I thought I knew about my life. We'd been together for 3 years. 3 years of Sunday morning pancakes, of him stealing my hoodies, of planning a future that felt as solid as the brownstone we'd been saving up to buy in Brooklyn. 3 years of love letters, actual handwritten love letters that he'd slip into my laptop bag or leave on my pillow when he had to travel for work. My darling Emma. They always began, "You are the poetry my heart never knew it could write." God, how naive I was. The unraveling started on a Tuesday in October. I was working late at the marketing firm where I'd climbed from intern to senior account manager, fueled mostly by coffee and the dream of that brownstone. Marcus was supposed to be in Chicago for a client presentation, but when I tried to call him around 10 p.m., it went straight to voicemail. Not unusual. He often turned his phone off during important meetings that ran late. But then Sarah from accounting tagged him in a photo on Instagram. A photo taken that same evening at Rosemary's, the little Italian place 6 blocks from our apartment. He was laughing, his head thrown back in that carefree way that used to make my stomach flutter. Across from him sat a woman I'd never seen before. Petite, blonde, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my rent. My heart didn't race. It just stopped, like someone had pressed pause on my entire circulatory system. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned, zooming in on details I didn't want to see. The way she was leaning forward, chin resting on her manicured hand. The way he was leaning back, completely relaxed, more at ease than I'd seen him in months. The wine glasses, 2 of them, both nearly empty. The intimate lighting that made it look less like a business dinner and more like something else. The timestamp said 9:47 p.m. Eastern Time, New York time. Marcus wasn't in Chicago. I screenshotted the photo with shaking fingers, then immediately hated myself for doing it. What was I, some paranoid girlfriend checking up on her boyfriend? But the evidence was right there, glowing accusingly from my phone screen. I tried calling him again. Straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Marcus. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." That voice I'd heard whisper, "I love you," into my ear every night for 3 years now felt like it belonged to a stranger. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I sat there in my office chair, surrounded by the detritus of another late night, empty coffee cups, Chinese takeout containers, the presentation I'd been perfecting for tomorrow's client meeting, and felt my world quietly collapse. The rational part of my brain tried to construct innocent explanations. Maybe it was a client dinner that got moved to New York at the last minute. Maybe his phone died. Maybe the woman was a colleague or a client or someone's wife he was entertaining as a favor. But the rational part of my brain was being systematically murdered by the part that had noticed all the little changes over the past few months. The way he'd started working out more frequently. The new cologne. Something expensive and sophisticated that replaced the familiar scent I used to steal from his bathroom counter. The way he'd become oddly protective of his laptop, closing it whenever I walked into the room. And then there were the love letters that had stopped coming. I used to find them everywhere, tucked between the pages of books I was reading, taped to the bathroom mirror, slipped into my purse when I wasn't looking. Emma, my beautiful, brilliant Emma, one had read just 2 months ago. "I fall asleep every night amazed that someone like you chose someone like me. I can't wait to spend forever proving I deserve that choice." When had the last one appeared? I couldn't remember, and that realization felt like swallowing glass. I left the office at midnight and took a cab home, watching the city blur past through rain-streaked windows. Our apartment building looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Red brick, fire escapes zigzagging up the side like iron lightning, the corner bodega still glowing with fluorescent warmth. But everything felt different, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. The apartment was dark. Marcus's keys weren't on the hook by the door. I turned on every light and sat down at our kitchen table, the one we'd bought together at a flea market in Williamsburg, the one he'd insisted on refinishing himself because it has character, just like us. The wood grain was still uneven in places where he'd gotten impatient with the sandpaper. I pulled out my phone and stared at that Instagram photo again. In the harsh kitchen lighting, it looked even more damning. They looked happy, comfortable, like they'd done this before. At 1:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hey babe, just finished up. Presentation went great. Miss you. Flight home tomorrow around 2 p.m. Love you." I read it 17 times, parsing every word for hidden meaning. The casual, "Hey babe," the lie about the presentation, the perfectly normal tone, like he hadn't just spent the evening gazing adoringly at another woman over expensive wine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could confront him right now, send him the screenshot, and demand an explanation. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe fear, maybe just the bone-deep exhaustion that comes with having your reality crumble in slow motion. Instead, I wrote back, "Miss you too. See you tomorrow." Then I went to our bedroom and opened the shoebox I kept under my side of the bed. Inside were all of Marcus's love letters, carefully arranged in chronological order and tied with a ribbon, the same blue ribbon from the first bouquet of flowers he'd ever given me. I'd kept every single one, even the scrappy early ones written on coffee shop napkins. I untied the ribbon and spread the letters across our comforter, 43 pieces of paper that told the story of what I'd thought was the great love of my life. His handwriting had evolved over the years, becoming more confident, more flowing. But the sentiments had remained consistent. His devotion, his certainty that I was the one, his dreams of our future together. Dearest Emma, read one from our 6-month anniversary. I know it's crazy to say this so early, but I can't imagine my life without you in it. You've made me want to be the kind of man who deserves forever. Another, from last Valentine's Day. Every love song makes sense now. Every cheesy romantic movie, every poem about finding the one, I finally understand what they were talking about. It's you, Emma. It's always been you. And my personal favorite, written after a stupid fight we'd had about whose turn it was to do laundry. Even when we're bickering about mundane things, I'm still amazed that I get to bicker with you. I love you in your anger, your joy, your Tuesday morning bedhead, your brilliant problem-solving mind, your terrible taste in reality TV. I love all of you, all the time, even when you're wrong about fabric softener. I'd laughed until I cried when I first read that one. Now, reading it again at 2 a.m. while my boyfriend lied about his whereabouts, it felt like a cruel joke. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I lay there staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of the Marcus in those letters versus the Marcus who could look another woman in the eyes the way he was looking at her in that photo. Were the letters lies? Had he always been this good at deception? Or had something changed, some crucial moment when his feelings shifted and he just forgot to tell me? By the time the sun came up, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. One photo didn't prove anything. Maybe I was just stressed from work, paranoid from too much caffeine and too little sleep. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation that would make me feel foolish for ever doubting him. But when Marcus came home the next afternoon, wheeling his suitcase through our front door with that same easy smile he'd been giving me for 3 years, I found myself studying his face like a detective searching for clues. "Hey, beautiful," he said, dropping his bag and pulling me into a hug that felt exactly like it always had, warm, familiar, safe. He smelled like airplane air and that new cologne. God, I missed you. "How was Chicago?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Boring as always. You know how these corporate presentations go. Lots of nodding and pretending to care about quarterly projections." He kissed my forehead, then moved to the kitchen to grab a beer from the fridge. But the client loved our proposal, so it was worth the trip. He was so casual about it, so convincing. If I hadn't seen that photo, I would have believed every word. "That's great," I said. "I'm proud of you." And part of me was. Part of me wanted to believe him so badly that I almost convinced myself the photo was some kind of mistake, a misunderstanding that would make sense once I found the courage to ask about it directly. But I didn't ask. Not that night, not the next day, not the day after that. Instead, I watched him, cataloging every gesture and expression for signs of guilt or deception. I became hyper-aware of his phone habits, his schedule, his moods. I started coming home from work at unexpected times, looking for evidence of... what exactly? I wasn't even sure. A week passed. Marcus was his usual self, affectionate, funny, present. We had dinner together every night, watched Netflix curled up on our couch, made love with the same passion and tenderness that had always defined our relationship. If he was living a double life, he was remarkably good at compartmentalizing. Maybe that was the most unsettling part. Not that he was cheating, I still wasn't entirely sure he was, but that he could lie so effortlessly, so completely, without a single crack showing in his performance. The second shoe dropped on a Friday. I was leaving work early for once, planning to surprise Marcus with dinner from his favorite Thai place, when I saw them. 2 blocks from our apartment, sitting at an outdoor table at the cafe where Marcus and I had had our first date. The same blonde woman from the Instagram photo, and Marcus, holding hands across the small round table. This time there was no room for innocent explanations. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen, watching the man I loved trace circles on another woman's palm with his thumb. She was laughing at something he'd said, her head tilted back in pure delight. It was the same laugh I used to inspire, the same gentle thumb movements he used to save for me. I should have confronted them. I should have marched over there and demanded answers, made a scene, thrown the Thai food in his lying face. But I didn't. Instead, I took a photo. Turnabout seemed fair play, and then walked home in a daze, my legs moving independently of my conscious mind. The Thai food went into the trash. I couldn't imagine eating anything ever again. I sat on our couch and stared at the photo I'd taken, zooming in on their intertwined fingers, on the look of absolute contentment on his face. This wasn't a business meeting or a favor for a friend. This was a man in love, just not with me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Working late tonight, don't wait up. Order something good for dinner. Love you." Another lie, delivered with the same casual ease as all the others. That's when the anger started. Not the explosive, dramatic anger of movies and television, but something colder and more corrosive. It began as a small, tight knot in my chest and gradually spread outward, replacing the hurt and confusion with something sharper and more focused. How dare he? How dare he lie to my face every single day while living this other life with this other woman? How dare he make me doubt my own sanity, my own perceptions? How dare he continue to touch me, to tell me he loved me, to plan a future with me while simultaneously planning a future with someone else? And those letters, those beautiful, heartfelt letters that I'd treasured like sacred texts, what were they now? Practice runs? Rough drafts for the poetry he was writing to her? I went to our bedroom and pulled out the shoebox again, but this time the letters looked different. The words that had once made my heart soar now felt like evidence in a trial. Each declaration of eternal love was proof of his capacity for deception. Each promise of forever was revealed as a lie he was capable of telling with breathtaking sincerity. "I can't imagine my life without you in it," I read aloud to our empty apartment. "Apparently you can imagine it just fine, Marcus. In fact, you've been living it." I carefully retied the ribbon around the letters and put them back in the box. They would stay safe for now. I had a feeling I might need them later. That weekend I became a detective. While Marcus was supposedly playing basketball with his college friends, a story I no longer believed, I did what any rational woman would do. I lost my mind and went through his things. I started with his laptop. Password protected, but I knew Marcus well enough to guess it on the third try. Our anniversary date, the number he'd always claimed was the most important in his life. The irony was almost funny. His browser history was mostly clean, he'd learned to be careful, but I found breadcrumbs, searches for restaurants I'd never been to, a saved map to an address in Soho that wasn't anywhere he'd ever mentioned going, a recently viewed Airbnb listing for a weekend getaway to the Hamptons, dated for next month. Next, I went through his dresser. In the back of his sock drawer, behind the rolled-up dress socks he never wore, I found a small jewelry box. Inside was a ring, not just any ring, an engagement ring. A beautiful, expensive-looking solitaire that definitely wasn't meant for me. I'd made my preferences clear months ago when we'd passed a jewelry store, and I'd pointed out the vintage Art Deco style I preferred. This was classic, traditional, the kind of ring that would look perfect on the manicured hand of a petite blonde woman. I sat on our bedroom floor holding this ring, this symbol of a future he was planning with someone else, and felt the last of my heartbreak transform into something harder and more dangerous. Marcus was going to propose. Not to me, to her. All those late nights working, all those business trips that might or might not have been real, all those distracted moments and carefully casual lies. He'd been building a relationship with someone else while living with me, using me as his placeholder, his safety net, his comfortable routine while pursuing his real love story. I put the ring back exactly where I'd found it and spent the rest of the weekend planning. By Monday morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Marcus directly, wasn't going to give him the chance to explain or lie his way out of this. I wasn't interested in the inevitable gaslighting, the attempts to make me feel crazy or paranoid or jealous. I'd seen enough evidence to know the truth, and the truth was that the man I'd planned to spend my life with was planning to spend his life with someone else. But I wasn't going to make it easy for him. For the next 2 weeks, I played my part perfectly. I was the same loving, trusting girlfriend I'd always been. I laughed at his jokes, listened to his fake stories about work and friends, made love to him with the same passion as before. The only difference was that now I was performing, just like he was. And I was apparently just as good at it. I used those 2 weeks to do research. Her name was Sophia Chen, and she wasn't hard to find once I started looking. 26 years old, a successful marketing consultant who worked with high-end fashion brands. Beautiful, accomplished, and according to her LinkedIn profile, exactly the kind of woman who would appeal to Marcus's new image of himself. Sophisticated, ambitious, connected. I found her Instagram, her Twitter, her company website. I learned that she loved expensive wine, traveled frequently for work, and had a small white dog named Coco. She posted photos of her morning lattes, her weekend brunches, her carefully curated apartment in Soho, the same Soho address I'd found in Marcus's browser history. She was living the life I'd thought Marcus and I were building together, just with better lighting and more expensive accessories. More importantly, I learned that she had no idea about me. Her social media showed no awareness that the man she was dating had been living with another woman for 3 years. There were no guilty or secretive undertones to her posts, no careful cropping to avoid showing too much of Marcus. She posted photos of their dates openly, tagged him in stories, shared couple photos with captions like, "Perfect night with my favorite person," and "Can't wait to see where this goes." She thought she was in a normal, monogamous relationship with a single man named Marcus, who traveled frequently for work. She had no idea she was the other woman, even though technically I was. The realization that Marcus had been lying to both of us should have made me feel some sympathy for Sophia. Instead, it made me angrier. Not only had he been deceiving me, he'd been deceiving her too, letting her fall in love with a fantasy while keeping his real life, our real life, carefully hidden. 2 weeks and 3 days after I found the engagement ring, Marcus came home with flowers and that particular smile that meant he had something important to tell me. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, setting the bouquet on our kitchen counter. Sunflowers, my favorites. Or what used to be my favorites, before they became a prop in whatever scene he was about to perform. My heart rate didn't spike. I'd been expecting this conversation for days, had rehearsed my reactions in the mirror. I knew what he was going to say because I'd been watching him work up the courage to say it. "Sure," I said, settling onto our couch with what I hoped looked like casual curiosity. "What's up?" He sat down beside me, took my hands in his, and looked directly into my eyes with an expression of such sincere regret that I almost believed he felt bad about what he was about to do. "Emma, these past 3 years have been incredible. You know that, right? You've been amazing, patient and supportive, and just everything I could have asked for in a partner." Past tense. He was already speaking about us in the past tense. "Marcus, you're scaring me," I said, because that's what the Emma who didn't know about Sophia would have said. "I don't want to scare you. I think we need to be honest about where we are, about where we're going." He paused, squeezed my hands, took a deep breath. I could practically see him accessing the script he'd rehearsed. "I care about you so much, Emma. You have to know that. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't think I'm in love with you anymore. I don't think I have been for a while." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I let my face crumple slightly, let my eyes fill with tears that were only partially performed. Because even though I'd known this was coming, even though I'd had time to prepare, hearing him say it out loud still hurt. "I don't understand," I whispered. "What changed? Did I do something wrong?" No, you didn't do anything wrong. You're perfect, Emma. That's almost the problem. You're perfect, and you deserve someone who can love you the way you deserve to be loved. Someone who can give you everything you want. I want you, I said, because that had been true once upon a time. "I love you, Marcus." His face twisted with what looked like genuine pain. "I know you do, and that makes this so much harder." "Then don't do it," I said. "Whatever you're thinking, we can work through it. We can go to counseling or take a trip or—" "Emma, stop." His voice was gentle but firm. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm making this harder?" The anger leaked through despite my best efforts to contain it. "You're the one who's breaking up with me out of nowhere and I'm making it hard?" "It's not out of nowhere," he said quietly. "Be honest. Haven't you felt it too? The distance between us? The way we've been going through the motions?" I wanted to laugh. Yes, I'd felt the distance, because he'd been creating it while building intimacy with someone else. Yes, we'd been going through the motions, because his heart had been elsewhere for months. But I didn't say that. Instead, I let myself cry, because the woman who didn't know about Sophia would be devastated right now. And part of me, the part that remembered what it felt like to love him, was devastated. "So that's it?" I asked through my tears. 3 years and you just, what, wake up one day and decide you don't love me anymore? He looked down at our joined hands, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I never loved you, Emma. Not the way you loved me. I thought I did, I wanted to, but I think I was just comfortable, content. And that's not fair to either of us. I never loved you." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath and sending a shock of pain through my chest that was sharper than anything I'd felt since this whole nightmare began. All those letters, all those declarations, all those moments when he'd looked into my eyes and promised me forever, all of it had been a lie. Not just the last few months with Sophia, all of it. 3 years of my life, 3 years of love and trust and building a future together, and he'd never felt for me what I'd felt for him. I pulled my hands away from his and stood up, suddenly desperate to put distance between us. "You never loved me," I repeated, my voice hollow. 3 years, Marcus. 3 years of telling me you loved me, writing me letters about how I was the love of your life, making plans for our future, and you never loved me? "I thought I did," he said helplessly. "I wanted to. You're incredible, Emma, you really are. Any man would be lucky to have you. But I can't keep pretending to feel something I don't feel. It's not fair to you." "How noble of you," I said, and this time I didn't try to hide the sarcasm. "Breaking up with me for my own good. How very considerate." "Emma, please don't make this ugly." "Ugly?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You just told me that the last 3 years of my life were based on a lie, and you're worried about things getting ugly? I'm trying to be honest with you. Now you're trying to be honest. Where was this honesty 6 months ago? A year ago? When did you realize you didn't love me, Marcus? When did you know you were wasting my time?" He couldn't answer that, and his silence told me everything I needed to know. He'd known for a long time. Maybe he'd never been sure of his feelings, but he'd definitely known they weren't enough. And he'd stayed anyway, comfortable in the life we'd built together while keeping his options open for something better. Something like Sophia. "I should go stay at David's tonight," he said finally. "Give you some space to process this." "How thoughtful," I said. "Yes, you should go." He stood up, hesitated for a moment like he wanted to say something else, then apparently thought better of it. He grabbed a few things from our bedroom, careful not to disturb the sock drawer where the engagement ring was hidden, and packed them into the same suitcase he'd taken on his fake business trips. At the door, he turned back to me. "Emma, I hope you know this doesn't change how much I care about you. You're going to find someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved." "Just not you," I said. "Not me," he agreed quietly. "I'm sorry." After he left, I sat in our apartment, my apartment now, I supposed, and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. The man I'd loved for 3 years, the man I'd planned to marry, had just told me he'd never loved me back. Every tender moment, every passionate kiss, every whispered "I love you" in the dark had been either a lie or self-delusion on his part. But underneath the hurt and betrayal, I felt something else, relief. Because now I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to play the role of the unsuspecting girlfriend, didn't have to smile and make conversation while dying inside. The performance was over, and I could finally stop acting like I didn't know the truth. Marcus thought he was getting away with something. He thought he'd handled this breakup with dignity and honesty, that he'd somehow taken the high road by ending things before pursuing Sophia publicly. He had no idea that I knew about her, no idea that I'd been watching him lie to my face for weeks. He thought this was over, but I was just getting started. That night, I opened the shoebox and spread all 43 love letters across my living room floor. I read every single one again, but this time I wasn't looking for comfort or trying to understand where things went wrong. This time I was looking for ammunition. "My darling Emma, you are the poetry my heart never knew it could write. I fall asleep every night amazed that someone like you chose someone like me. It's you, Emma. It's always been you. I can't imagine my life without you in it." Every letter was signed "Forever yours, Marcus," or "All my love always, Marcus," or some variation on the theme of eternal devotion. 43 pieces of evidence that directly contradicted his claim that he'd never loved me. Maybe he'd convinced himself that he'd never loved me to make the breakup easier, to justify what he'd done with Sophia. Maybe he genuinely believed his own revision of our history. But these letters told a different story, and they were written in his own hand. I had proof of his lies, and I was going to make sure everyone saw it. Over the next few days, I did more research. I learned that Marcus and Sophia had been together for 8 months, meaning he'd started seeing her just 2 weeks after writing me the last love letter I'd received. I learned that they'd taken 3 weekend trips together, all coinciding with his supposed business travel. I learned that he'd told her he was a travel writer, which explained why she didn't question his frequent absences or why she never came to his apartment. Most importantly, I learned that they were moving fast. Very fast. Sophia's Instagram stories showed her at bridal shops, trying on wedding dresses, just for fun, with her friends. She'd posted photos of engagement rings with heart eye emojis captioned, "Someday soon?" She was clearly expecting a proposal, and given the ring hidden in our old apartment, she wasn't wrong. The timeline clicked into place. Marcus had been planning to propose to Sophia, but he needed to clear the decks first. Hence the breakup with me, delivered with just enough false sincerity to make himself feel like a decent person. But he'd made one crucial error in his planning. He'd left me with evidence. I spent a week crafting my revenge, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. Marcus thought he could rewrite our history, pretend he'd never loved me to make his new relationship feel less like infidelity. But I had 43 pieces of paper that told the truth about our love story, and I was going to make sure the right people saw them. I hired a private investigator, yes, I went there, to confirm the details I'd pieced together from social media. Within 3 days, I had everything I needed. Photos of Marcus and Sophia together, copies of hotel receipts from their romantic getaways, even a recording of Marcus telling a bartender that he was planning to propose to his girlfriend as soon as I tie up some loose ends. The PI also discovered something I hadn't found on my own. Marcus and Sophia were engaged. He'd proposed the week after our breakup, during a romantic dinner at the same restaurant where I'd first seen them together. The ring from his sock drawer was now on her finger, and they were planning a wedding for the following month. 1 month. He was marrying her 1 month after telling me he'd never loved me. The speed of it was breathtaking and insulting. 3 years with me, and I'd never even gotten a hint of a proposal timeline. 1 month without me, and he was ready to pledge his eternal devotion to someone else. But here's what Marcus didn't know. In his haste to start his new life, he'd gotten sloppy. The private investigator discovered that the wedding was going to be a big affair, 200 guests at a vineyard in Napa Valley. Marcus came from money, old East Coast money, and his family apparently wanted to make a statement with this wedding. Sophia's Instagram was full of planning details, the venue, the date, even the guest list for the engagement party they were throwing the week before. Everything I needed to know, gift-wrapped and handed to me by their own social media oversharing. 2 weeks before their wedding, I put my plan into motion. I quit my job, burned that bridge completely by telling my boss exactly what I thought of his micromanaging and the company's toxic work culture. I'd been wanting to leave for months anyway, and my savings were enough to carry me through whatever came next. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I bought a plane ticket to San Francisco. I was going to Marcus's wedding. Not as an uninvited guest crashing the party. I was too smart for that. Instead, I'd done something much more subtle and infinitely more devastating. I'd contacted Marcus's mother. Patricia Wells had always liked me. During the 3 years Marcus and I were together, she'd made a point of including me in family events, asking about my work, remembering details about my life that even Marcus sometimes forgot. She'd told me more than once that she hoped Marcus would make an honest woman out of me soon, and I'd always gotten the impression that she saw me as daughter-in-law material. She had no idea that Marcus and I had broken up. Why would she? Marcus certainly hadn't told his family about Sophia yet, probably planning to introduce his fiancée as a whirlwind romance rather than admit he'd been cheating on his longtime girlfriend. So when I called Patricia and told her I had something important to discuss with her about Marcus, she was more than happy to meet me for lunch. "Emma, darling, you look wonderful," Patricia said as we settled into our table at the Pierre Hotel restaurant. She was exactly as I remembered, elegant, sharp-eyed, with the kind of understated wealth that showed in her posture rather than her jewelry. "Though you seem a bit thin. Is Marcus not feeding you properly?" "Actually, Mrs. Wells, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, I said, my voice carefully modulated to suggest deep concern rather than vindictiveness. I'm worried about Marcus. Her expression shifted immediately to maternal alertness. Worried how? I think he might be having some kind of breakdown. Or maybe he's been lying to me about some things and I'm not sure what to believe anymore. I reached into my purse and pulled out a carefully curated selection of Marcus's love letters, the most passionate, most devoted ones, along with printouts of his social media activity with Sophia. He wrote me this letter just 2 months ago, I said, handing her one of his most recent declarations of love. But then last week he broke up with me and said he'd never loved me at all. And now I find out he's been seeing someone else, and apparently they're getting married next week? Patricia's face went through a fascinating series of expressions as she processed this information. Confusion, then anger, then something that looked like embarrassment. I don't understand, she said, studying the letter. This is definitely Marcus's handwriting. And he wrote this to you 2 months ago? 2 months ago, I confirmed. Mrs. Wells, I've been with Marcus for 3 years. I love him and I thought he loved me. But if he's marrying someone else next week, then either he's been lying to me this whole time, or he's been lying to her. I showed her the photos of Marcus and Sophia, the hotel receipts, the timeline I'd constructed. I presented it all as a concerned girlfriend trying to make sense of her boyfriend's contradictory behavior, not as a scorned woman planning revenge. I just don't know what to think, I said, letting my voice break slightly. If he never loved me, why would he write letters like these? And if he did love me, how could he be marrying someone else so quickly? Patricia was quiet for a long time, studying the evidence I'd laid out. Finally, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Emma, I want you to know that I had no idea about any of this. Marcus told us he was bringing someone special to the wedding, but he said it was a new relationship. He never mentioned that you two had broken up. I'm sure he has his reasons, I said diplomatically. I wanted someone in his family to know the truth, in case there's something going on with him that he needs help with. You're very generous to be concerned about his well-being after what he's put you through, Patricia said, and there was steel in her voice that made me think Marcus's childhood had included some very uncomfortable conversations with his mother. I still care about him, I said, which was technically true, even if the nature of that caring had shifted dramatically. Would you be willing to come to the wedding? Patricia asked suddenly. I blinked, genuinely surprised. I'm sorry. I know how this sounds, but I think Marcus needs to face what he's done. And I think his bride-to-be deserves to know who she's marrying. Patricia's voice was calm, but her eyes were blazing. I've raised 3 sons, Emma, and I did not raise them to be liars and cheaters. Mrs. Wells, I couldn't possibly— You could, she said firmly. As my guest, I want you there, Emma. I want you to stand up during the ceremony when they ask if anyone objects. The suggestion was so far beyond what I'd been planning that I actually laughed. You want me to object to your son's wedding? I want you to tell the truth, she said. My son is about to marry a woman under false pretenses after breaking your heart with lies about never loving you. If that's not grounds for objection, I don't know what is. I stared at her, trying to process this unexpected turn. Patricia Wells wanted me to crash her son's wedding. This was better than anything I could have planned. I don't know, I said slowly. It seems so dramatic. And what if I'm wrong? What if there's some explanation I'm not seeing? Emma, Patricia said, her voice gentle but firm. You've shown me love letters he wrote to you 2 months ago and photos of him with another woman from the same time period. You've shown me hotel receipts and restaurant bills and enough evidence to convict him in a court of law. What other explanation could there possibly be? She was right, of course. But I needed her to think this was her idea, not mine. I just don't want to cause trouble for your family, I said. The trouble has already been caused, Patricia replied, by Marcus. Now we just need to decide whether we're going to let him get away with it. We spent another hour planning. Patricia would add me to the guest list as her +1. Her husband had passed away 2 years earlier, so she was attending alone anyway. She would make sure I had a seat with a clear view of the altar. And when the officiant asked if anyone had reason why Marcus and Sophia should not be wed, I would stand up and speak my piece. Just tell the truth, Patricia said as we prepared to leave. Read one of his letters aloud, explain the timeline, let everyone draw their own conclusions. What if Marcus tries to explain it away? Let him try, she said with a smile that reminded me exactly where Marcus had gotten his charm. I think you'll find that lies are much harder to maintain when they're exposed in front of 200 people. We exchanged contact information, and Patricia promised to text me the wedding details. As we said goodbye, she pulled me into an unexpected hug. "I'm sorry my son hurt you, Emma. You deserved better than what he gave you." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. "For listening. For believing me. Sweetheart, I've known Marcus for 28 years. I know when he's lying." The week leading up to the wedding was a strange kind of limbo. I felt oddly calm, like I was floating above my own life watching someone else make these choices. I bought a dress. Nothing too dramatic. Just a simple black sheath that looked appropriate for a wedding, but could also be read as mourning attire, depending on your perspective. I got my hair done, my nails done, played the part of a woman preparing for an important social event. Because that's what this was, really. The most important social event of my life, and possibly Marcus's. I flew to San Francisco the day before the wedding and checked into a hotel near the Vineyard. That evening, Patricia texted me the final details. The ceremony was at 4 p.m., followed by cocktails and dinner. I should arrive at 3:45 and take my seat in the third row, aisle seat on the bride's side. "Perfect view," her text read, "and easy exit if needed." I liked Patricia more and more. That night, I laid out my outfit and rehearsed what I was going to say. I'd chosen 3 of Marcus's most passionate love letters, the ones that most clearly contradicted his claim that he'd never loved me, and practiced reading them aloud until I could do it without my voice shaking. I also wrote my own speech, something to bookend the letters and provide context for the wedding guests who would have no idea what was happening. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I would begin, "but I think there's something everyone should know about the groom. Simple. Director. Impossible to ignore." I fell asleep clutching Marcus's letters to my chest, and for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. Clear skies, perfect temperature, the kind of day that would have made me believe in destiny if I were the bride. I had breakfast, took a long bath, and got ready with the methodical precision of a soldier preparing for battle. At 3:30, I drove to the Vineyard. The venue was stunning, exactly the kind of place I'd once imagined having my own wedding. Rolling hills covered in grapevines, a charming stone building that looked like it had been transplanted from Tuscany, gardens full of roses and lavender. Everything was elegant and romantic and perfect. Marcus had excellent taste. I had to give him that. I found Patricia near the entrance, greeting guests in a pale blue dress that probably cost more than my rent. When she saw me, her face lit up with what looked like genuine pleasure. "Emma, darling, you look beautiful," she said, kissing my cheek. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. "Good. Marcus is around back with the groomsmen, so you won't run into him before the ceremony. Sophia is getting ready in the bridal suite upstairs." Patricia paused, studying my face. "Are you having second thoughts?" "No," I said, and realized I meant it. He made his choice. "Now I'm making mine." Patricia smiled, and there was something almost proud in her expression. "That's my girl. Come on, let me show you to your seat." The ceremony area was set up in the Vineyard's garden, with white chairs arranged in neat rows facing an altar decorated with cascading flowers. It looked like something out of a magazine, the kind of wedding I'd dreamed about having someday, just not at my ex-boyfriend's wedding. Patricia led me to my assigned seat, third row, aisle, exactly as promised. I had a perfect view of the altar and an easy escape route. From here, I could see everything: the string quartet setting up, the photographer testing his angles, the guests beginning to fill the chairs. "I'll be in the front row," Patricia murmured. "When the time comes, I'll give you a little nod. Just stand up and speak from your heart." "Thank you," I said. "For everything." "Thank you," she replied. "For giving me the chance to raise my son right, even if it's 30 years too late." Guests continued to arrive, a mix of both families and friends. I recognized some faces from Marcus's social media, people I'd never met but had seen in group photos from college reunions and work events. They looked happy, excited, dressed in their wedding finest, and ready to celebrate love triumphant. If only they knew. At exactly 4 p.m., the string quartet began to play, and the wedding party started their procession down the aisle. First the groomsmen, looking handsome in their gray suits. Then the bridesmaids, beautiful in blush pink dresses that complemented the garden setting perfectly. And then Marcus appeared at the altar, and I felt my breath catch. He looked good, really good. Tan and fit and radiating confidence, the picture of a man who'd found his happiness and was ready to claim it. His smile was bright and genuine as he watched his wedding party take their places, and when he looked out at the assembled guests, his eyes were full of joy. This was not a man who felt guilty about anything he'd done. This was a man who genuinely believed he deserved this happiness, this fresh start, this beautiful woman who was about to walk down the aisle toward him. The music swelled and everyone stood as Sophia appeared at the back of the aisle. She was breathtaking. Her dress was simple but elegant, her hair swept into a soft updo that showed off her graceful neck, her face glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from believing all your dreams are coming true. She walked slowly down the aisle, her eyes locked on Marcus's face, completely absorbed in her perfect moment. I watched Marcus watch her, saw the way his expression softened with what looked like genuine love. This wasn't an act or a performance. He really did love her. Maybe he'd never felt this way about me, or maybe he'd convinced himself he hadn't to make this transition easier, but what I was seeing now was real, which made what I was about to do either justice or cruelty, depending on your perspective. Sophia reached the altar and Marcus took her hands. They gazed at each other with the kind of intensity that made the rest of the world disappear, and I felt a stab of something that might have been envy. Not for Marcus, I was long past wanting him back, but for that feeling, that certainty, that absolute trust in another person's love. The officiant began the ceremony with the traditional words about gathering together to witness the union of Marcus and Sophia, about the sacred nature of marriage, about the promises they were about to make to each other. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," he said, "but with careful consideration and deep commitment." I almost snorted. Careful consideration. Right. The ceremony proceeded through the usual elements, readings about love, a prayer, the lighting of a unity candle. Marcus and Sophia looked radiant, completely absorbed in each other and the moment. Around me, the guests watched with the satisfied smiles of people witnessing true love. If only they knew what I knew. Finally, the officiant reached the part I'd been waiting for. "If there is anyone present who knows of any lawful impediment why these two persons should not be joined in marriage, speak now or forever hold your peace." The words hung in the air. This was it, my moment. The room was completely silent, everyone waiting for the ceremony to continue to the vows. I looked at Patricia in the front row. She turned slightly and gave me the smallest nod. I stood up. The rustle of my dress was loud in the silence. Every head in the place turned to look at me, and I heard the collective intake of breath as 200 wedding guests realized something unexpected was happening. Marcus's face went white, not pale, white, like every drop of blood had drained from his body in the span of a heartbeat. His mouth fell open, and he stared at me with an expression of such pure terror that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Sophia looked confused, her eyes darting between Marcus and me as she tried to understand what was happening. She had no idea who I was or why I was standing up at her wedding. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent garden, "but I think there's something everyone should know about the groom." The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. I could feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me, could hear the photographer's camera clicking away as he captured what would either be the most dramatic wedding photos ever or evidence for the divorce proceedings that would inevitably follow. "My name is Emma Richardson," I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "And I was in a relationship with Marcus for 3 years. Until 3 weeks ago when he told me he was breaking up with me because he'd never loved me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw Sophia's hand fly to her mouth, saw Marcus take a step toward me as if he could somehow stop what was happening through sheer force of will. "Marcus," I said, looking directly at him, "you told me you never loved me, but I have some things here that suggest otherwise." I pulled out the first love letter, my hands remarkably steady as I unfolded the familiar piece of paper. The photographer was having a field day, capturing every moment of what was quickly becoming the most spectacular wedding disaster in recent memory. "This letter is dated January 15th of this year," I announced to the assembled crowd. "Just 10 months ago." I began to read, my voice carrying clearly across the garden. "My dearest Emma, I know I tell you this every day, but I need to write it down so you can read it whenever you doubt how much you mean to me. You are not just the love of my life, you are my life. Every morning I wake up next to you, I'm amazed that someone as extraordinary as you chose someone as ordinary as me. I spend my days thinking about ways to make you smile, my evenings grateful for your laughter, and my nights planning the future we're going to build together. I can't wait to marry you, Emma. I can't wait to stand in front of all our friends and family and promise you forever, because forever with you isn't long enough. You are my heart, my home, my everything. All my love, always and forever, Marcus. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see guests exchanging glances, could feel the collective confusion and shock ripple through the crowd. But I wasn't done. Here's another one, I said, pulling out the second letter. This one is dated March 3rd, just 7 months ago. My beautiful Emma, I read aloud. Today marks exactly 2.5 years since you agreed to be my girlfriend, and I still can't believe my luck. Do you remember what I told you that first night? That I was going to love you so completely that you'd never doubt how I felt about you. I hope I've kept that promise. I hope every day you know that you are cherished, adored, and treasured beyond measure. You are the poetry my heart never knew it could write, the song I never knew I needed to hear. I love your brilliant mind, your generous spirit, your terrible taste in reality TV shows, and the way you steal my hoodies and somehow make them look better on you than they ever did on me. I love you when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're angry at me for leaving dishes in the sink, and when you're half asleep and mumbling nonsense that somehow still makes perfect sense to me. I love all of you, Emma. Forever yours, Marcus. More murmurs from the crowd, louder this time. I could see wedding guests turning to each other, whispering, trying to make sense of what they were hearing. Near the altar, Sophia had gone very still, her bouquet trembling in her hands as she stared at Marcus with growing understanding. Marcus himself looked like he might be sick. His face had gone from white to green, and he kept opening his mouth like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. And this last one, I said, pulling out the final letter, is my personal favorite. It's dated August 18th, just 4 months ago. I could hear someone in the crowd whisper, "Oh my God," as the timeline became clear. 4 months ago, Marcus had been with Sophia for 8 months, which meant this letter was written right in the middle of their relationship. Darling Emma, I read, my voice growing stronger with each word. I know I've been distracted lately with work, and I'm sorry if I haven't been showing you how much you mean to me. Let me be crystal clear, you are everything to me. Everything. When I imagine my future, I see your face. When I think about growing old, I picture your hand in mine. When I dream about having children someday, I see them with your eyes and your stubborn streak and your incredible capacity for love. You make me want to be better than I am, Emma. You make me want to deserve the love you give me so freely. I know I don't always succeed, but I promise you this. I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. You are my forever, Emma. My always. My everything. All my love, Marcus. The letter fluttered to the ground as I let it fall, and in the silence that followed, I could hear it land on the grass with the softest whisper. These letters, I said, looking around at the stunned faces of the wedding guests, were written while Marcus was dating Sophia, while he was, according to what I've learned, falling in love with her and planning to propose. While he was telling her that he was a travel writer who worked alone, which is why she never saw his apartment or met his friends or wondered why he was never available on weekends. I turned to look directly at Sophia, and my heart actually clenched at the devastation on her face. Whatever anger I'd felt toward her evaporated in that moment, replaced by something uncomfortably close to sympathy. Sophia, I said gently, I don't know what Marcus told you about his past, but I lived with him for 3 years. We shared an apartment, a bed, a life. We had joint bank accounts and vacation photos, and a 5-year plan that included buying a house in Brooklyn. And according to these letters, he loved me forever and couldn't wait to marry me. Sophia's bouquet hit the ground with a soft thud. Her hands were shaking, and she was staring at Marcus with an expression I recognized, the look of someone watching their entire reality crumble in real time. Marcus, she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper, is this true? Marcus looked around wildly, like he was searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Every face in the crowd was turned toward him, waiting for an explanation that could possibly make sense of what they'd just heard. Sophia, I can explain. He started, but she cut him off. Is it true? She repeated louder this time. Were you living with her? Were you with her while you were with me? It's complicated, Marcus said weakly. It's not complicated. Sophia's voice cracked with emotion. Were you cheating on her with me, or were you cheating on me with her? Because either way, you're a liar! The crowd was getting restless now, the whispers growing louder as the guests processed what they were witnessing. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably recording what would soon become the most viral wedding video of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, Patricia's voice cut through the chaos as she stood up in the front row. Every eye turned to her, and she commanded the scene with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I think it's best if we postpone this ceremony until some things can be clarified. Mom, Marcus said desperately, please, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Patricia said, her voice ice cold. I understand that I raised a son who thinks it's acceptable to lie to two women simultaneously and break both their hearts for his own convenience. She turned to address the crowd. Thank you all for coming. The reception will be canceled, obviously. We'll be in touch about gifts and travel arrangements. The dismissal was clear, and guests began to stand, murmuring among themselves as they started to file out. But many lingered, clearly reluctant to miss whatever happened next. Sophia turned to Marcus, and when she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. 8 months, she said. 8 months you've been telling me you love me, planning a future with me, making me believe I was the most important thing in your world. And the whole time you were living with another woman. Sophia, please let me explain. Explain what? She snapped. Explain how you could write love letters to another woman while proposing to me. Explain how you could look me in the eye every day and lie to me about everything. She yanked the engagement ring off her finger and threw it at his feet. It landed in the grass next to my discarded love letter, a small circle of diamonds that had cost someone a fortune and was now worth nothing. 8 months of my life, she continued, her voice rising. 8 months of falling in love with someone who doesn't exist. Because the man I thought I was marrying doesn't lie to women who love him. The man I thought I was marrying doesn't keep a secret girlfriend hidden away like some dirty secret. You weren't a secret, Marcus said desperately. Emma, tell her I broke up with you weeks ago. After 3 years, I said quietly. You broke up with me after 3 years of telling me you loved me because you needed to clear the decks for your real relationship. I looked at Sophia, who was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But I thought you deserved to know who you were marrying. Sophia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara further. Thank you, she said. Thank you for telling me the truth, because he never would have. She turned back to Marcus one last time. You know what the worst part is? I actually loved you. The person I thought you were anyway. I loved you enough to say yes when you proposed, enough to plan a wedding, enough to imagine spending my life with you. And you were just, what? Playing house with me while you figured out how to get rid of your real girlfriend? It wasn't like that, Marcus said, but even he seemed to know how hollow the words sounded. Then what was it like? Sophia demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're a coward who couldn't commit to either of us, so you strung us both along until you absolutely had to choose. She picked up her dress and started walking toward the house, then stopped and turned back. And you know what makes it even worse? Those letters she read? They're beautiful. They're everything a woman wants to hear from the man she loves. Which means you do know how to love someone, you just chose not to love me that way. With that, she was gone, disappearing into the house and leaving Marcus standing alone at the altar. The remaining guests were openly staring now, no longer bothering to pretend they weren't witnessing a complete meltdown. Marcus looked around at all the faces turned toward him, his family, his friends, his colleagues, and I could see the exact moment he realized there was no coming back from this. No explanation that would make sense, no charm that would smooth this over, no way to salvage his reputation or his relationships. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been the real Marcus underneath all the lies and manipulation. He looked lost, young, afraid, like a little boy who'd been caught doing something terrible and couldn't understand how his careful plans had gone so wrong. Emma, he said, and his voice was small and broken. I did love you. Maybe not the way you loved me, but not enough. I finished for him. Not enough to be faithful. Not enough to be honest. Not enough to choose me when someone better came along. He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it again. What could he say? I was right, and we both knew it. Why? I asked, and I was surprised to realize I genuinely wanted to know. Why couldn't you just break up with me when you met her? Why the lies, the deception, the love letters that apparently meant nothing? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, destroying the careful styling that had probably taken an hour to perfect. I don't know, he said helplessly. I didn't plan for this to happen. I met Sophia and she was everything I thought I wanted. But you were comfortable, safe, and I didn't know how to give that up. So you decided not to choose at all? I said. You decided to have both of us until you absolutely couldn't anymore. I was going to tell you, he said weakly. After the wedding, I was going to what? Send me a postcard from your honeymoon? The few remaining guests were now openly watching our conversation like it was a soap opera. I could see Patricia in my peripheral vision, still standing in the front row with her arms crossed and an expression that could have frozen hell. I'm sorry, Marcus said finally. Emma, I'm so sorry. You're right about everything. I was a coward and I hurt you and I hurt Sophia and I don't know how to fix it. You can't fix it, I said simply. That's the point. Some things, once you break them, stay broken. He nodded, looking defeated. What happens now? I looked around at the destroyed wedding, at the scattered flower petals and the abandoned bouquet and the engagement ring glinting in the grass. Now you figure out how to live with what you've done. And Sophia and I figure out how to move on from what you did to us. I bent down and picked up the love letters I'd dropped, folding them carefully and putting them back in my purse. I'll be keeping these, I said, not because I want to remember you, but because I want to remember that I deserved better than what you gave me. Emma, goodbye, Marcus, I said, cutting him off. I hope someday you figure out how to love someone enough to be honest with them. I walked past him toward the house, my heels clicking on the stone path. As I passed Patricia, she reached out and squeezed my arm. Well done, dear, she murmured. I'm proud of you. Thank you, I said. For everything. Keep in touch, she said. I'd like to know how you're doing. I nodded and continued toward the house, where I could see Sophia's bridesmaids clustered near the entrance, looking shell-shocked and confused. They parted as I approached, and I found Sophia in the bridal suite, sitting on a velvet chair in her wedding dress, staring at nothing. Are you okay? I asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course she wasn't okay. Her wedding had just been destroyed in the most public way possible. She looked up at me, and I was struck by how young she looked without her makeup, how vulnerable. I should hate you, she said quietly. I wouldn't blame you if you did, but I don't, she continued, because you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the vineyard where wedding guests were still lingering, probably hoping for more drama. 8 months, she said again. 8 months of my life wasted on someone who was never really mine. I'm sorry, I said. I know that doesn't help, but I'm sorry you had to go through this. She turned back to me, and there was something almost curious in her expression. What was he like? When you lived together, I mean. Was any of it real? I thought about how to answer that. I think he loved me as much as he was capable of loving anyone, I said finally. But I don't think that was enough for either of us. Sophia nodded slowly. He told me he'd never been in a serious relationship before, said he'd been waiting for the right person. That's what he told me about his previous girlfriends too, I said gently. I think Marcus rewrites history to fit whatever narrative makes him feel better about his choices. God, I'm such an idiot, Sophia said, sinking back into the chair. There were so many red flags. The way he never wanted me to come to his place, how he was always traveling for work, how he didn't want to post too many photos of us together because he was private about his personal life. You're not an idiot, I said firmly. You trusted someone you loved. That's not stupidity. It's what people do in relationships. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My friends are going to have a field day with this. Sophia, the girl who got dumped at her own wedding. Your friends will support you, I said. And anyone who doesn't isn't really your friend anyway. We sat in silence for a moment, two women who'd been betrayed by the same man, trying to make sense of the wreckage of our lives. What are you going to do now? Sophia asked. I don't know, I admitted. I quit my job to come here, so I guess I need to figure that out first. But honestly, for the first time in weeks, I feel like I can breathe again. Because you got your revenge? I considered that. Maybe partly, but mostly because I finally told the truth. I spent so long keeping his secrets, protecting his lies, making excuses for his behavior even to myself. It feels good to just be honest about what happened. Sophia nodded. I think I need to do that too. Be honest about what happened, I mean. Not pretend this was some romantic misunderstanding or that I'm better off without him, though I probably am. Just admit that I got played by someone I trusted. There's no shame in that, I said. The shame belongs to him. A knock on the door interrupted us. One of Sophia's bridesmaids peeked in, looking hesitant. Soph? The photographer wants to know if you want him to pack up, and the wedding planner is asking about the reception. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, then stood up. Tell the photographer he can go. And cancel everything, the reception, the music, all of it. I'll deal with the vendors tomorrow. The bridesmaid nodded and disappeared again. Sophia turned back to me. I should probably go face the music, she said. Figure out how to explain this to my family. Deal with the aftermath. She paused. Would you maybe want to get a drink sometime? I know this is weird, but I feel like you might be the only person who really understands what this feels like. The suggestion surprised me, but after a moment, I realized it didn't sound terrible. I'd like that, I said, but maybe not tonight? Definitely not tonight, Sophia agreed. Tonight I'm going to order room service, watch terrible movies, and try to process the fact that my entire life just changed in the span of 20 minutes. That sounds like a good plan. I gave her my phone number, and she gave me hers. As I prepared to leave, she called after me. Emma? Thank you. I know this was probably hard for you too, but thank you for telling me the truth. You deserve to know, I said simply. I left the vineyard as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that would have been beautiful if this had been a normal wedding day. Most of the guests had finally dispersed, but I could see Marcus near the parking area, talking intensely with a small group of men who were probably his groomsmen. He looked haggard, defeated, like a man whose carefully constructed world had just collapsed around him. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for him. But mostly I felt free. For the first time since I'd seen that Instagram photo weeks ago, I felt like I could move forward without carrying the weight of his lies. The drive back to my hotel gave me time to think about what came next. I had no job, no boyfriend, no 5-year plan. My carefully ordered life had been completely disrupted, and I had no idea what came next. But for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me. I'd spent 3 years building a life around someone who'd never fully committed to building one with me. I'd made myself smaller, quieter, more accommodating, trying to be the woman he wanted me to be. And in the end, it hadn't mattered because he'd never really wanted me at all, just the comfort and security I provided while he looked for something better. Well, now I was free to figure out what I wanted, independent of anyone else's needs or expectations. Free to be as big and loud and uncompromising as I felt like being. Free to write my own love letters to myself about the life I was going to build. That night, in my hotel room, I ordered the most expensive bottle of wine from room service and sat on the balcony overlooking the vineyard where my ex-boyfriend's wedding had imploded. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the messages that had been pouring in all evening, from friends who'd seen the viral videos already circulating on social media, from former colleagues who'd heard through the grapevine, from family members who wanted to make sure I was okay. The videos were everywhere. Someone had recorded my entire speech and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "Woman destroys cheating ex at his wedding with his own love letters." It had already been viewed 2 million times. Another angle, apparently filmed by a wedding guest, showed Marcus's face as I read the letters aloud. You could literally watch him realize his life was over in real time. I should have been embarrassed. This was going to follow me forever, this moment of public revenge that would probably be turned into memes and discussed on relationship podcasts and dissected by strangers on the internet. My private pain had become public entertainment. But I wasn't embarrassed. I was proud. I'd told the truth. I'd stood up for myself and for Sophia, and I'd made sure that Marcus faced consequences for his actions. For once in his life, he couldn't charm his way out of trouble or rewrite the narrative to make himself the victim. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed my best friend Rachel's name. "Emma fucking Richardson," she said before I could even say hello. "Please tell me you did not just crash your ex's wedding and read his love letters in front of 200 people. "Okay," I said. "I won't tell you that." "Emma!" she shrieked. "Oh my God, you're already internet famous. The video of you reading those letters has been shared like 1,000,000 times. There are think pieces being written about you. BuzzFeed wants to interview you." "BuzzFeed wants to interview me?" "Yes. And so does every other media outlet. You just became the patron saint of scorned women everywhere. People are calling you a hero." I laughed, surprising myself. I don't feel like a hero. I feel like someone who finally got tired of being lied to. "That's exactly why you're a hero," Rachel said. "Do you know how many women stay quiet when men treat them like shit? How many of us make excuses for cheaters and liars because we don't want to rock the boat? You didn't just rock the boat, Em. You blew it up with dynamite." "I might have gone a little overboard," I admitted. "You went exactly the right amount of overboard. I am so proud of you I could cry." We talked for another hour, with Rachel filling me in on all the social media reactions and the think pieces that were already being written about modern relationships and the power of truth-telling. Apparently, I'd struck a nerve with women everywhere who'd been cheated on, lied to, or manipulated by men who thought they could rewrite history to suit their needs. After we hung up, I sat on the balcony for a long time, watching the stars come out over the vineyard. Tomorrow, I'd fly back to New York and figure out what came next. I'd look for a new job, maybe in a different field. I'd find a new apartment that was mine alone. I'd start over, from scratch, building a life that didn't depend on anyone else's love or approval. But tonight I was going to sit here and feel proud of what I'd done. I'd told the truth, even when it was hard. I'd stood up for myself and for another woman who'd been hurt by the same man. I'd refused to let Marcus's lies become the final word on our relationship, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the accommodating girlfriend trying to be perfect enough to keep a man who was never really mine. Not the heartbroken woman crying over love letters from someone who claimed he'd never loved her. Just me, Emma Richardson, the woman who wasn't going to let anyone rewrite her story ever again. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment I thought it might be Marcus, trying to have the last word somehow. But when I opened it, I saw it was from Sophia. Watching the videos online, she'd written, "You looked amazing up there. Thank you again for saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I owe you a very expensive drink?" I smiled and typed back, "You don't owe me anything. But I'll take that drink anyway. Tomorrow night? I'm staying in the city for a few days to deal with wedding vendor refunds and general life reorganization. It's a date. The non-romantic kind. The best kind, honestly." I put my phone away and poured myself another glass of wine. Tomorrow I'd start rebuilding my life. But tonight, I was going to celebrate the end of a chapter that had been dragging on far too long. In the distance, I could see lights still on in the vineyard's main building, probably staff cleaning up the aftermath of the day's drama. Part of me felt bad for the vendors and venue staff who'd put so much work into creating a beautiful wedding, only to have it end in spectacular disaster. But mostly I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd found the courage to speak up. Grateful that Patricia had supported me. Grateful that Sophia had reacted with grace and strength instead of blaming me for destroying her wedding. Grateful that the truth was finally out there, messy and public and impossible to ignore. I pulled out my phone one more time and opened a new note. If everyone wanted to know my story, maybe it was time to tell it properly. Not just the dramatic wedding crash, but the whole thing. The slow realization that something was wrong, the discovery of the lies, the weeks of playing detective while my heart broke a little more each day. 3 years ago, I typed, I fell in love with a man who wrote me love letters. I wrote for hours, telling the whole story from beginning to end. The good parts and the bad parts, the moments when I'd been foolish and the moments when I'd been strong, the way love could make you blind to red flags, and the way the truth could set you free even when it hurt. When I finished, I had a 15,000-word essay that was part memoir, part warning, part love letter to every woman who'd ever been gaslit by a man who claimed to love her. I read it over once, then sent it to my email so I could polish it tomorrow. Maybe I'd pitch it to a magazine. Maybe I'd just post it on Medium and let it find its audience. Maybe I'd turn it into a book, Love Letters from a Liar, a modern guide to spotting emotional manipulation. Had a nice ring to it. Or maybe I'd just keep it for myself, a record of who I'd been and who I was becoming. Either way, it felt good to write it all down, to transform my pain into something that might help someone else avoid the same trap. The wine was making me philosophical, but I didn't mind. For months, I'd been drowning in confusion and hurt, unable to see past the lies to understand what had really happened to me. Now, finally, I could see it clearly. I'd been in love with someone who wasn't capable of loving me back the way I deserved. That wasn't my fault, and it wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was just the truth, sad and simple and finally free. I raised my glass to the stars and made a toast to myself. To Emma Richardson, who learned the difference between being loved and being used, and decided she deserved better. Then I finished my wine and went to bed, sleeping more peacefully than I had in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new possibilities. But tonight, I was exactly where I needed to be, free from the lies that had been weighing me down and ready to write the next chapter of my story. The chapter where I was the hero of my own life, instead of a supporting character in someone else's.